Feels like deja vu. We were literally at this point last year. Cincinnati Bengals, Kansas City Chiefs, AFC Championship game. We spent all this time focusing Bills, Chiefs, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, but it turns out the real answer to the best quarterback rivalry in the National Football League was right in front of our face. It was Patrick Mahomes, the man's jersey who you are wearing, versus Joe Burrow, Joey B. Last year's AFC Championship was a weird game. Chiefs got out to a huge lead, thought it was just going to be a runaway to the Super Bowl for Kansas City, and then the second half happened. Arguably, Patrick Mahomes' worst second half of play in his entire playing career. Now, these teams have also played two other times since in the last calendar year, in the last calendar year and a half, roughly. And the Bengals have gotten the better of the Chiefs. Bengals 3-0 in those matchups and have won each matchup by 3 points. So this is a very close margin between these two and what separates them. And you could point little things out of each game, point little things to take away from each game. How do we get to each point? But bottom line is who gets the victories, and that is Cincinnati. Now, seems crazy to think a team could win 4 times against a team that we consider a powerhouse in the AFC, but that's what Cincinnati has in front of them. What do you think, Kyle? Is your boy going to get it done? Is he going to go to his 3rd Super Bowl ever? Is he going to have an opportunity to get his 2nd ring?
So Kansas City is in a really interesting position because you mentioned Cincinnati has beaten them 3 times in the last 13 months. And the thing that I've found so fascinating is not only has Cincinnati beat them 3 times in the last 13 months, the rest of the NFL has beaten Kansas City twice in the last 13 months. And also, Kansas City lost those games in 3 distinctly different ways. Like the formula to beat Kansas City is out there. The Colts showed it. The Cincinnati Bengals revealed it the time they played them this year in the regular season. You can go back to that stretch last year where Mahomes was really struggling. Like the strategy is Mahomes push the ball down the field and make mistakes. When Mahomes makes mistakes and you capitalize on them, that's how you beat Kansas City. And Kansas City's corrected and adjusted. It's not a perfect strategy for beating Kansas City. Again, Kansas City, since that Giants game last year, I believe, is now 22-4 since they were 3-4 last season. So, it's not a perfect strategy of like Kansas City beats themselves up, but the Bengals also beat them in a way where they beat them with the game plan for beating Kansas City, which was keep it close, keep it close, keep it close. Then Kelsey fumbles, we capitalize on it, win the game. That's how they won early in the season. And they're able to keep it close because the Bengals also have a top 5 offense. Now, it's not the best offense in the NFL by a gigantic margin like Kansas City was this year, but it's still a top 5 offense. And so that's the game plan for beating Kansas City that works for most teams. But the Bengals have also beat Kansas City like they did last year when they just said, no, we're just going to chuck it on you. 300 yards to Jamar Chase, 150 yards to T. Higgins. We're just going to score 45 points on you. It's really only the 2nd time I've ever seen that. That and the Tampa Bay Super Bowl have been the only times the team has done that. And then the 3rd time they beat them was Patrick Mahomes vomits on himself, Andy Reid vomits on himself, and then Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce slip in the vomit and fall on the floor, which, again, we've never seen that other than that AFC Championship last year. So, it happens to everyone. Tom Brady blew a 17-point lead in a playoff game against Peyton Manning. It happens. It was just surprising to see it happen last year. And so now that we're back in the same position, I suspect that they won't throw up on themselves again. That probably won't be the way that they lose this game. It'll probably be one of the other 2 ways, which is either the Bengals follow the exact game plan of the Week 13 game and just wait for Kansas City to make the mistake and then they capitalize on it, or maybe they come out chucking and ducking and trying to take advantage of a Kansas City defense that is young, but not in the good way of young. Like they have 5 starters. If you count Leo Chenal, who's like the 12th guy on the defense, depending on packages, 5 of their 12 starters are either 1st or 2nd year players for Kansas City on defense. So maybe that's the strategy the Bengals take. Either way, it'll be interesting to watch.
Now, a coordinator that's received a lot of praise on social media going into this one is Lou Anarumo, their defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, he's been part of all three of those victories against Kansas City in that time. Do you think that there's any specific strategy he's really been doing over the course of those wins to beat the Chiefs, or is it just happenstance that's gotten us to that?
So there is a really interesting strategy. The Bengals, when they played Kansas City back in week 13, they were specifically rushing 3 and dropping back 8. And they were saying, hey, Patrick Mahomes, we're going to give you time in the backfield. We're going to give you the opportunity to find people open in the field. But without a Tyreek Hill, we're going to be able to guard those people a little bit better. And eventually we'll be able to break down pressure. Aaron Schatz, who I talked to this week, talked about how Orlando Brown, who's the left tackle for Kansas City, just had an awful game against the Cincinnati Bengals. Just awful game the first time they played. And as a result, it became easier for them to rush with, I believe Reeder is the guy in the middle for them, Reeder, Hendrickson, and Sam Hubbard. And so when they rushed 3, Patrick Mahomes was trying to find these spaces all over the field, and there was just everyone covered because you had 8 guys guarding 5 receivers for Kansas City. So that's a strategy that works, and it works better if Patrick Mahomes is limited as a quarterback, because the problem with that is, well, if you just give him all the time in the world, Mahomes is just going to scramble and run for, 10 yards, 15 yards, 20 yards like he does all the time. But if he's limited in mobility, it may make him more confined to the pocket or make him more confined to just, I think the pocket for Mahomes, we can extend 5 yards from traditional quarterbacks. If we count that as the giant pocket that Mahomes has, that's probably where Cincinnati might succeed.
Can we though this week? Because, okay, whatever they did at halftime in the Jaguars game, it worked. It got them through the rest of that game. But following the initial high ankle sprain, those plays were ugly. I am so surprised that Mahomes was even able to play that game. I'm surprised he's playing this week. It's something supernatural in a way. It's phenomenal that he's been able to gut it out. And I get it. You only have so many bites at the apple to be able to win a championship, to be able to secure your legacy. And Mahomes is battling for a grander prize in the scheme of his legacy. He's trying to become a top 5 quarterback, top 3 quarterback, greatest quarterback of all time. That's what he's pursuing. And part of doing that is you have to win championships, and you need to have a few of those huge playoff moments, those signature playoff moments. And battling through a high ankle sprain would be an all-timer of a gutsy performance for Mahomes if he's able to make history and make that happen. I don't know. I mean, this is usually a multi-week injury, and he's going out there. The first few plays I mentioned, he's limping around. So can we expect him to be mobile? Can we expect him to do the things that Patrick Mahomes normally does, escape the pocket, make a roll out 360 behind the back throw? Is that all going to be part of his arsenal? Or are we going to expect a more traditional pocket passer this week?
Traditional pocket passer, definitely not. That's just not going to happen. I mean, we saw it in the second half of that game. Mahomes was still able to get out and move. He was still able to connect with guys while buying time. The traditional pocket passer, definitely not, because if anything, when they switch up the offense, it will be going to what I call the Tom Brady offense, which is not traditional pocket passer. It's get the ball out in 2.5 seconds. Like, that's the strategy they'll pivot to instead of like confining him to the pocket. It will be lots of screen passes, lots of running backs lined up in the backfield, moving out, lots of quick outs, lots of slants. They're going to change it to be Mahomes get the ball out quick instead of like confining him to like these long developing routes where he sits in the pocket.
Now, I will say, you mentioned Lou Anarumo's potential strategy here of dropping guys back. Isn't that a potential matchup disadvantage if they try and go to that style? Because typically quick passing game is great when a team's over pursuing or trying to get pressure or has got 5 guys and trying to over blitz. But if they're dropping back guys, then it's going to be a little bit harder to just, pick them apart on these quick 3-step dropbacks.
this is where it's going to be an interesting chess match, right? Which is, how does Andy Reid adjust? How does Lou, I don't know how to pronounce his last name,
It's a
Anarumo?
tough one. Anarumo. That's what I've seen pronounced most
Anarumo.
often.
See, I've heard people go between it. At like, look, Sweet Lou and Andy Reid are gonna have to have this chess match of changing their game plan. Cause like the problem with trying to drop back 8 over and over again is like Patrick Mahomes can move in space. The problem with rushing 5 is that you better get to the quarterback the first time, because if not, you've got 6 guys in coverage, and that's Travis Kelce sitting right in the middle of the field. So those guys are going to get open if you give them enough time. This is why it's such an interesting chess match on that side of the
That's
ball.
another great chess match, though. Travis Kelce. Now, we know how good Travis Kelce is. He's a made man. He's a Hall of Famer. He's probably the greatest tight end of all time.
14 catches last week.
But against these Bengals, when we go back to what went wrong in those 3 matchups against these Bengals, he's averaging 20 less receiving yards per game in those 3 games than he is in any other matchup against any other team in the NFL. The fact that the Bengals have said, okay, Travis Kelce is that guy. We got to stop that guy. They do things a little bit differently. Who's going to be that next guy that steps up? Now, we've seen Kadarius Toney have his moments. We've seen Sky Moore have his moments. The rushing game for the Chiefs, actually, between McKinnon and Isaiah Pacheco has had its moments. Who's going to be that second option if, again, the Bengals are able to limit Travis Kelce?
You know what's super interesting about that is that the answer is all of them. Because if you remember the 49ers game, and I forget who they played right after the 49ers, but in a 2-game stretch, Kansas City completed, over these 2 games, they completed 36 passes at one point. And if you combine the 2 games, they did it to 18 different receivers over 2 games. This is saying that a receiver can have a catch in one game and another, and that counts for 2. Basically, in each game, they averaged 18 completions and 9 different receivers had a catch. Kansas City's strength, and they've used it, is, yeah, you can try and take away Juju. We'll throw to Kadarius Toney. You can take away Kadarius Toney. We're going to create space for Sky Moore. We're going to create space for McCole Hardman, who's back from injury. We're going to create space for those copycat Travis Kelce tight ends they have, whether it's Jonas Gray or whoever, or Jonah Gray, I think is his name. It's Gray or whoever else they have.
As a Travis Kelce fantasy owner this year, I got to tell you, anytime they threw to Jonas Gray or Nick Gray or whoever, it pissed me off, because I'm like, oh, yeah, Travis Kelce, nice. Oh, shit, that's not Travis Kelce. Why is he wearing 84?
Yeah, the thing
87.
is they all look like Travis Kelce, which is the funny thing for me. I'm like, they just drafted a bunch of 6th-round tight ends that also look like Travis Kelce.
Well, they look like Travis Kelce in body type, not in the face. Travis Kelce, very distinct face, but in terms of body type, yeah, no, you look and you're just like, who's this big hulking tight end that kind of moves in a... See, Travis Kelce, when he moves, he doesn't look fast. He's one of those guys, I guess you would call him deceiving speed. He kind of looks like a lot more sluggish than he actually is. And then you're just like, oh, he's just blowing by 3 guys. How'd that happen? Neither here.
So to your point, though, real quick. So if you do want to find a number 2 for Kansas City, they, at the end of the season, they did have a number 2, and that is the guy who had a receiving touchdown in their last 6 games of the season, which is Jerick McKinnon. Surprisingly enough, had a receiving touchdown in each of their last 6 games of the season.
And I could see that one because, again, what we're talking about, what you want to get the ball out of your hands quick. You got your check down running back, Jerick McKinnon, who's actually been making a lot of big plays, looking very healthy. I'm like wondering myself, where was this when you were one of the highest paid running backs in the league for the San Francisco 49ers? God damn it. Anyway.
Didn't work out for them. So
happens.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
I want to change gears to another matchup this week. We know that there's going to be some injuries on the Bengals offensive line. Alex Kappa, Jonah Williams, they've been both already ruled out. And I said at about the midway point of the year, it did seem like the Bengals offensive line started to figure things out. We had Joe Burrow having a lot more games in which he had a clean jersey at the end of it. But now it feels like we're back to square one with these injuries here. And the Chiefs defense, I know the Chiefs defense has been a running gag over the last couple of years. This is true weakness of the team. And when the offense has been as good as it's been, of course, the Chiefs defense is the weakness of the team. But this year, what they've been able to do from a pass rush standpoint is one of the strengths of the team. Chris Jones, we know that he's had a Defensive Player of the Year nomination season. I know he's been missing a playoff sack, but still, we know what Chris Jones is. We know what he can do. We know what a guy like Frank Clark can do, George Karlaftis. Guys, they can get to the quarterback. How are they going to match up against this Bengals defense now, or Bengals offense, now that we know that there's going to be injuries on the offensive line? How does that change things for Joe Burrow? Is there any takeaways you have from the Buffalo Bills game? And the Buffalo Bills game is where their defensive line, their front seven, wasn't able to get pressure despite the injuries. Can the Chiefs?
This is the interesting point, because my conclusion of the Kansas City defense this year, and I got the support of Aaron Schatz on this, is that the Kansas City defense is perfectly mid. They are perfectly mid. They are an average defense. They do some things well. They do some things bad. They are just perfectly average and really young too. Because remember, last year in the playoffs, it was Daniel Sorensen and Tyrann Mathieu, who were kind of the key pieces. I know Daniel Sorensen became a running meme at a certain point, but like they were the key guys who had been around for all 5 years. Like I said, 12 players on that defense, 5 of them are either in their first or second years. You're seeing 6th round rookie Jalen Watson get tons of snaps in the secondary. Trent McDuffie is their number 1 corner, and obviously he was a first round pick this last year. Karlaftis was a first round pick this last year. Leo Chenal you could point to, Nick Bolton. Like, they're a really young defense. The thing that they do really well, as he said, is they've got Chris Jones and they've got the plumber. And Frank Clark is the plumber because Frank Clark is the name of every plumber you've ever had before. So they've got those 2 guys in the middle who are really going to make a difference. I'll show some love to Derek Nottie too. He's been really, really good for them the past 4 years as kind of a backup to Chris Jones, playing when they put 4 up front. But basically that's where Kansas City's going to have to get pressure. But the thing was, last year they had Burrow sacked 3 times and he just escaped somehow, like he was Eli Manning in the Super Bowl. So like last year they did everything right and it just didn't matter because they couldn't drag Burrow to the ground, and then he was completing 3rd downs to Jamar Chase. And man, it's still just so frustrating that they had the sacks to force the punts and they turned it away. The interesting thing is that Burrow hasn't actually been that impressive so far in the playoffs. I mean, the Bengals offense was excellent against Buffalo. When you have scoring drives of 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, and 7 minutes, you're kind of doing whatever you want on the offensive side of the ball. But Joe Burrow hasn't actually been that impressive. The Baltimore game, they probably should have lost if Lamar Jackson's healthy or if Brown doesn't stick the ball out like that, because they only gave him 17 points on offense. The Buffalo game, Joe Burrow statistically was an average quarterback for the weekend. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see where they go, right? Because I bet you Kansas City's game plan is going to be taking away the running game. I think that's kind of what they do best. And so they're going to try and hold Mixon to 3 yards a carry or prevent Samaje Perine from getting catches out of the backfield. It's just... does that mean Burrow's going to have enough time to hit Chase? Is he going to create space? Are they going to double team Chase? Or how are they going to play Boyd? How are they going to play Hayden Hurst? I'm not actually sure what the best game plan is for Kansas City. I think if you're looking for a traditional X factor, it's going to be Willie Gay, who at the end of his press conference told everyone to get ready to see you at Burrowhead Stadium on Sunday.
I thought that was Chris Jones, but there's been so much trash talk this week. It's hard to decipher where it's coming from. We know Eli Apple is the biggest culprit of that, but his trash talk more directed at the Buffalo Bills on the way out. Anyway, guys, prediction standpoint, I feel like wearing that jersey. I it's obvious, but go ahead, divulge.
Well, my rule is always bet on red, because even if I end up being wrong, you're going to be right more often than you aren't. I said that earlier this year when everyone was like, oh, you know who might win the AFC West? The Denver Broncos. That's who might be the team that takes down Kansas City. Just always bet on red, baby. Like, as good as I've seen a lot of banter about, is Joe Burrow becoming the best quarterback in the NFL? Look, man, Bengals were awesome this year. They have the number 4 offense in the NFL. Kansas City's number one. And not only are they number one, they're number one by a gigantic margin in terms of offensive efficiency, passer rating, DVOA. They are the number one offense by a lot. And Kansas City is going to win on Sunday because you got to bet on red, man. And you can get them as underdogs. You can get them as underdogs at home. When does that ever happen?
I think that's changed. Just to clarify, I believe they're a point favorite after it was revealed that Mahomes is healthy.
Okay.
So it did flip.
Okay.
Are they favorites in my mind? Are they underdogs in my mind? Well, they're going to be losers in my mind after the AFC Championship game concludes. I am picking the Cincinnati Bengals to go into Arrowhead and once again hang a big fat L on the Kansas City Chiefs. 4-0. Joe Burrow will be in his career against the Kansas City Chiefs. That's my prediction. My basis for it, they're not going to completely contain Mahomes at this game. I think this might actually be our best shootout game of the previous three matchups. There's some weird hunch I have about that one that I feel like we're going to get the best offensive matchup between the two. All right, guys. Well, let us know your thoughts in the comment section. We would like to hear your predictions. Leave a like on the video. Subscribe to our channel. Follow us on all our social medias. From Juju, from Kyle, stay safe, happy, and healthy. And we will see you next time.